Welcome back to Mental Flight, where powerful minds and revolutionary stories take flight. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join a community that seeks truth, courage, and real change. Don't forget to like the video and drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every word in the heart of West Africa, under the sweltering Sahelian sun. A young leader was put to the ultimate test, not in a courtroom or a battlefield, but in the confined, uncertain space of a military aircraft. Ibrahim Traoré'S, the revolutionary figurehead of Burkina Faso, already captured the world's attention with his bold stance against foreign interference, his muscular presence as a former bodybuilder, and his unwavering message of African sovereignty. Yet behind the scenes, it was one defining journey through hostile skies that would shake his resolve. 4 split-second decisions and crystallized the kind of leader he truly was. The flight began under tense circumstances. Intelligence. Reports warned of possible sabotage, enemy drones, and internal betrayal. Despite the risk, Traoré insisted on leading a crucial aerial operation himself, traveling between secure zones to oversee a covert redeployment of loyalist forces. This was no symbolic gesture. It was a move of calculated defiance meant to reassert control over strategic military assets. As the aircraft climbed into unstable skies, turbulence wasn't just physical. Political tensions had reached a boiling point. Rogue elements within the state, backed by external actors, had grown, desperate to destabilize his leadership. Some saw this flight as an opportunity to intercept, detain, or even assassinate him. Traoré knew this. Every glance exchanged in that cabin carried weight. Every flicker of radar, every burst of static in the radio could have spelled betrayal or attack. And yet he sat calmly, his eyes scanning maps, his fingers gripping reports, his mind racing with backup plans. What separated this journey from any ordinary mission was its symbolism. It represented not just physical movement, but ideological commitment. Traoré wasn't simply flying between military posts. He was bridging the gap between revolution and governance, between rebellion and responsibility. His choice to be airborne in such a volatile moment wasn't reckless. It was a calculated demonstration of resolve. As night fell, enemy signals began to interfere. The crew faced a communications blackout for nearly 45 minutes. In that silence, anxiety grew thick. Rumors of an ambush loomed large, and the question hung unspoken in the air. Something happened now. Who would carry the movement forward? Traoré broke that silence with a speech, short but unforgettable. Reminded his team that they weren't fighting for power or fame, but for the right of their people to stand tall without chains. His voice cut through the fear like a blade, reigniting focus and unity. Then came the moment that would define the journey. Radar locked onto a fast-approaching, unidentified aircraft. With no communication and dwindling fuel, Traoré made a snap decision. Redirect course toward a narrow valley corridor, low and fast, risking everything to avoid confrontation and reach the hidden base below. It was a daring maneuver, one that required not just military skill, but a leader's courage to act decisively with lives in the balance. The jet engines roared, the terrain below blurred, and time seemed to slow. In those minutes, Traoré didn't just evade danger. He proved that leadership is measured not by how one commands from a podium, but how one acts under fire, when the stakes are survival and the mission is freedom. By the time the aircraft touched down at a remote desert airstrip, the crew was exhausted but alive. The hidden base had been reached, reinforcements secured, and the operation's success paved the way for a broader stabilization effort across key regions. What could have been a political disaster became a legendary tale among soldiers and supporters alike. That flight, now whispered about in camps and corridors, wasn't just a journey across a map, it was a crucible of leadership. It exposed the weight of responsibility on Traoré'S shoulders and the lengths he was willing to go to protect his nation's dream of independence. For many, it confirmed what they had suspected, that Ibrahim Traoré was not merely a symbol of resistance, but a leader forged in crisis. The tension was palpable from the moment the engines ignited. Ibrahim Traoré, the young and imposing president of Burkina Faso, was not just embarking on any ordinary military flight. He was stepping into a high-stakes operation that would push his leadership to the brink. This wasn't a public event, a photo opportunity, or a planned diplomatic mission. It was a mission carved in secrecy, rooted in urgency, and defined by risk. Every second of that flight carried the weight of a nation's fragile sovereignty. The circumstances leading up to the flight were marked by escalating threats from internal factions and mounting pressure from external players. Traoré, known for his muscular build and military discipline, had seized power in a coup fueled by frustration with foreign interference, jihadist violence, and institutional decay. But seizing power is one thing, holding it in the face of sabotage and rebellion is another. This particular flight was a strategic move to oversee the redeployment of elite forces into a red zone, suspected of harboring insurgent sympathizers and foreign-backed agents. Intelligence indicated potential betrayal, even within the ranks, and whispers of an assassination plot floated through military circles. Traoré chose not to command from afar, insisted on being on board, personally present in the air as orders were executed on the ground. It was a decision that defied traditional leadership instincts. Most heads of state would have delegated the task. But Traoré's leadership style was different, hands-on, visible, and unapologetically defiant. He understood the message his presence would send, that no matter the danger, he would stand shoulder to shoulder with his troops in the skies and on the battlefield. The aircraft, a modified military transport outfitted for covert operations, was heavily guarded, yet still vulnerable to long-range missiles, drone strikes, and betrayal from within. As the flight ascended into contested airspace, communication lines became patchy, and the crew received scrambled intelligence reports suggesting unidentified movement on their projected path. Was it a patrol, a rogue faction, or something far worse? The ambiguity added another layer of stress to an already combustible situation. Traoré, seated near the tactical briefing monitors, was more than just a passenger. He actively reviewed live surveillance feeds, radio intercepts, and encrypted communications. Every new signal or unexplained glitch was met with swift, calculated questions. His demeanor remained controlled, but those closest to him could see the gears turning. The stakes were colossal, not just for his safety, but for the morale of an entire military force and the belief of a population who had placed its faith in his promise of reclaiming Burkina Faso's independence. Mid-flight, the threat materialized. A radar signature appeared, fast and erratic, approaching from the northeast. Defensive protocols were activated, flares launched, and pilots began evasive maneuvers. The object disappeared as quickly as it had arrived, but it left behind a haunting possibility. Someone knew their route. Whether it was an ambush averted or a scare tactic, the message was clear. They were being watched. At that moment, Traoré gathered the flight team and elite soldiers on board for an impromptu huddle. He spoke not as a president behind a podium, but as a warrior among comrades. His words were sharp, brief, and filled with clarity. He reminded them that the fight they were in was not just for land or power, but for dignity. The air in the cabin shifted. Fear gave way to focus. The crew resumed formation, eyes forward, nerves steeled. Even as the threat level remained high, the presence of their commander-in-chief on board transformed doubt into discipline. The second half of the journey was no less intense. The terrain below was controlled by fragmented groups, some loyal, some hostile. Strategic altitude adjustments and radio silence became their shield. Upon approach to the landing zone, confirmation of troop movement in the area triggered an emergency holding pattern. Traoré refused to retreat. He ordered a descent under blackout conditions, using terrain masking techniques to minimize exposure. The aircraft touched down in a barren strip carved into the edge of an ungoverned province. What followed was a swift operational transfer of weapons and manpower, closed-door briefing with local commanders, and a symbolic but powerful moment. Traoré stepping onto the soil where the state's grip had nearly loosened. The covert military operation that tested President Ibrahim. Traoré's leadership was not just a battle against visible enemies. It was a high-stakes confrontation with unseen threats, both within and beyond his command. In the days leading up to the mission, Whispers of disloyalty began circulating through Burkina Faso's defense circles. Unmarked communications, intercepted satellite calls, and unusual troop movements pointed to a disturbing reality. Elements within Traoré'S' own military hierarchy were potentially compromised. The young president, known for his strong physique and sharper mind, found himself preparing not only for an external conflict, but also for a silent war within the walls of his own power structure. Traoré had risen to power as a symbol of defiance. Against foreign interference and neo-colonial control, his vision was clear: return sovereignty to Burkina Faso, purge corrupt networks, and dismantle dependency on external influence. But such a vision came with a price. Western intelligence networks had flagged his presidency as a critical destabilizer in the Sahel. Foreign media branded him a populist with militant ambitions. Private contractors and regional proxies were rumored to be working in the shadows, undermining his government through financial disruption, strategic misinformation, and even quiet alliances with local warlords. Amid this backdrop, intelligence confirmed that a critical zone near the border, strategically vital for national security, was being infiltrated by rogue actors. Some were foreign mercenaries operating under false flags. Others were former Burkina officers who had been quietly turned by cash, promises, or blackmail. This region also housed key military infrastructure, including a classified munitions depot and a hidden training site for elite forces. Losing control of it would mean not only a tactical disadvantage, but also a devastating psychological blow to the morale of the revolution Traoré had ignited. Rather than delegate the operation, Traoré made the audacious choice to oversee it himself. His presence would symbolize unity, clarity, and strength. But the risk was immense. Reports indicated that even the aircrew assigned to transport him could contain infiltrators. As security agencies scrambled to vet personnel and recheck logistics, counterintelligence teams worked round the clock to track suspicious movements. Fake clearance codes had already been discovered. One encrypted message had suggested an assassination attempt during mid-flight. The convergence of betrayal and foreign coordination was no longer hypothetical, it was imminent. Inside the aircraft, every eye was under scrutiny. Flight engineers double-checked every system. Communications officers worked under encryption layers so tight that even friendly bases had to wait for visual confirmation before responding. At one point, a critical navigation module malfunctioned. Whether it was technical failure or deliberate tampering remained unclear. Yet Traoré remained composed, recalibrating mission priorities with his closest tactical advisors. He knew that any overreaction could create panic, and any hesitation could be fatal. At 35,000 feet, far above the desert terrain, the external threat revealed itself. A military drone of unknown origin appeared on the outer radar. It did not respond to hails and approached at a vector inconsistent with normal patrols. Simultaneously, satellite intercepts picked up coded transmissions originating from a communications relay near the operation zone, signals that should not have been there. The conclusion was unmistakable. The enemy was not only waiting on the ground, but coordinating in real time. There were eyes in the sky, ears in the communications lines, and likely hands inside the president's own circle. What made the situation even more volatile was the timing. On the ground, a carefully orchestrated betrayal was already unfolding. A loyalist battalion tasked with securing the landing zone had been misdirected hours earlier by falsified orders. Replacement units had arrived late, only to find sections of the compound's security grid tampered with. Explosives caches had been moved, surveillance drones were jammed, and the enemy, cloaked in ambiguity, was preparing for either sabotage or ambush. Despite all of this, Traoré pressed forward. He issued encrypted override commands, rerouting Allied patrols to key defensive positions. He ordered rapid drone sweeps of nearby terrain and activated emergency failsafes within the aircraft. Every move he made was a gamble, every decision a test of whether the intelligence he had left was reliable. But it was in these moments that his leadership sharpened. Rather than succumb to chaos, he turned suspicion into structure. He created new temporary chains of command, assigning field roles based on last-minute vetting and psychological trust. Even upon descent, betrayal still loomed. An officer at the ground base who had greeted presidential aircraft in the past was nowhere to be seen. His vehicle had been found abandoned hours earlier, his uniform stripped, radio silent. That same officer had access to the security perimeter codes. The base was locked down and searched. 2 foreign-made encrypted devices were recovered, hidden within storage crates marked as humanitarian aid. They were traced back to a network, tied to regional arms dealers, known to operate through third-party proxies. The complexity of this operation revealed the ugly truth. Burkina Faso was not just fighting insurgents or mercenaries. It was in a battle against an entire architecture of influence, corruption, and infiltration. Traoré's commitment to national liberation was being met not with open conflict, but with covert sabotage, double agents, and geopolitical pressure. The fact that this convergence occurred during a single operation underscores how vulnerable young revolutionary governments remain in a world where control is often exercised through manipulation rather than invasion. What unfolded during that operation was more than just a skirmish or a test of tactics. It was a brutal, invisible chess match between those who seek to preserve sovereignty and those who profit from destabilization. In that moment, Traoré came face to face with the hardest reality of leadership. Sometimes the enemy wears your uniform, speaks your language, and salutes your flag. Ibrahim Traoré's rise to power was marked by defiance, youth, and the bold promise of reclaiming Burkina Faso's sovereignty from the grip of foreign influence and internal decay. But speeches and symbolism are not what ultimately forge the legacy of a revolutionary. It is action, under pressure, in the face of uncertainty, that separates mere ambition from actual leadership. In one of the most critical moments of his presidency, Traoré's quick decisions during a rapidly escalating crisis didn't just prevent disaster, they redefined him in the eyes of his people, his enemies, and the world. This was not the carefully choreographed calm of a press conference or the passionate roar of a rally. It was the raw, unfiltered battlefield of leadership in real time. During a covert operation meant to resecure vital military infrastructure, in a contested region, things spiraled out of control faster than expected. Intelligence failures, betrayal within the ranks, and external disruptions all collided. Communications breakdown left field commanders disoriented. Enemy drones were spotted circling the airspace. Supply convoy was ambushed en route to a forward base. And as panic began to creep into his team, it became clear that the president's very presence in the operation zone placed him in immediate danger. Traoré had a choice: evacuate and regroup, or act decisively in the heart of chaos. He chose the latter, and in doing so, stepped into the role of a wartime commander with clarity and courage that would mark a turning point in how he was perceived by all sides, rather than defer to protocol or rely solely on his security detail. Traoré assumed direct control of the operations command structure. With most channels jammed or compromised, he resorted to shortwave communication and encrypted handheld units, re-establishing fragmented lines between the ground units and air support. His orders were sharp and adapted in real time. He pulled back vulnerable infantry from exposed zones and redirected aerial surveillance toward suspected ambush points. He authorized field promotions for commanders he trusted and sidelined those under suspicion. In the span of minutes, he restructured the operational hierarchy under fire. These weren't bureaucratic decisions. They were life-and-death calls made under pressure, with no room for hesitation. One pivotal moment came when an Allied unit reported being surrounded in a canyon pass, trapped with dwindling ammunition and under fire. They sent out a distress beacon that was at risk of being intercepted by hostile forces. Traoré didn't just give approval for a rescue mission, he personally coordinated it, knowing that sending a second ground unit could be a trap. He ordered a vertical insertion from low-flying helicopters, taking advantage of the terrain's elevation and wind patterns. The maneuver was dangerous and unconventional, but it worked. The unit was extracted with minimal loss, and the enemy's attempt to capture prisoners and intelligence was thwarted. The soldiers rescued that day would later speak of the surreal moment when they realized the operation was being directed not by a general miles away, but by the president himself, standing firm at the mobile command post. His decisions weren't just tactical, they were psychological. Traoré understood that uncertainty is a weapon, and that fear spreads faster than gunfire. He took moments during the operation to speak directly to his troops, not with rehearsed speeches, but with steady, composed briefings that reinforced purpose. He reminded them that they were not fighting just for territory, but for a future, free from manipulation. That they were soldiers in the most important struggle Africa had faced in decades, not a war of bullets, but of dignity and destiny. These moments stabilized morale and shifted the mindset of his forces from reaction to determination. Even the most seasoned officers were struck by his calm in the eye of the storm. His ability to adapt also proved critical. When weather conditions grounded air support, he swiftly rerouted reinforcements by land, even mapping alternate paths himself using satellite terrain overlays. When a coded transmission was found to be compromised, he personally redesigned the communication protocol. On the spot, his blend of technical understanding, military instinct, and strategic thinking shattered any lingering perceptions that he was merely a symbolic leader with populist appeal. He wasn't just physically built like a warrior, he was thinking, like one at every level. International observers, even those skeptical of his legitimacy, took notice. The fact that Traoré had personally directed a mission in hostile territory while surrounded by threats of sabotage and foreign intervention sent shockwaves through regional politics. In foreign embassies, his risk-taking was seen as both a provocation and a demonstration of unshakable control. In African youth movements, his actions ignited fresh admiration. They saw in him something rarely visible in modern leadership, a man who did not seek refuge in politics when war came, but who marched straight into the fire to lead from the front. This moment also reshaped the internal narrative. In a region long plagued by leaders who hid behind privilege, who sent others to die while they remained in palaces, Traoré's decision to take command under fire elevated his moral authority. He became not just a president, but a symbol of resistance to foreign puppetry, to elite betrayal, and to the slow death of national pride. His rapid decision-making, under such a complex and dangerous scenario, forged a new image, that of a revolutionary leader not afraid to bleed for his cause, not afraid to lead with both his mind and his body in harm's way. The aftermath of the operation only cemented that image. Reports spread fast, from soldier to villager, from journalist to diplomat. Stories of how he stood in the dust commanding troops, how he recalibrated battlefield tactics mid-flight, and how he gave his personal gear to a wounded officer created a mythology that was real and earned. Traoré didn't just survive the crisis. He emerged from it transformed in the eyes of the nation, no longer just the young man who took the presidency, but the fearless revolutionary who had proven, under fire, that he deserved to keep it. If stories like these open your eyes and fuel your mind, then don't just watch, be part of the movement. Hit that subscribe button to never miss a voice that challenges the norm. Like this video if you believe the truth deserves a spotlight. And drop a comment if you're ready to stand with real leaders who fight for real change.